Let's talk about inflation. If you've been shopping lately, you probably have noticed that you're paying a little more or a lot more for the basic necessities you need to feed your family and live your life. Why is everything suddenly so expensive? Many so-called experts claim to be surprised and confused about this turn of events, but it's no fluke or coincidence. It's a pattern that everyone with eyes has been able to observe for months now. And while many factors contribute to higher prices, including labor shortages, government-imposed lockdowns, and supply chain disruptions, the most concerning long-term problem facing consumers is monetary inflation. We're currently seeing the highest inflation rates in 40 years. Major financial outlets such as Bloomberg, the Financial Times, and the Wall Street Journal have reported that the country's top economists have been shocked by this apparently inexplicable phenomenon. It would seem that inflation is an unpredictable force of nature, ready to strike without warning, like the sudden fury of a natural disaster. But inflation is a 100% man-made disaster that's neither random nor sudden. Or I should say, a government-engineered disaster. It's the entirely predictable consequence of the monetary policies pursued by the government over the last few years. The only reason for anyone to be surprised is if they haven't been paying attention, or if they have a political incentive to obscure the truth, lest voters hold them accountable. But before we get into that, let's back up a minute and explain what exactly inflation is. Most people think about it as rising prices. That's partially correct, but in reality, higher prices are just a symptom of inflation, not inflation itself. The word inflation simply refers to a reduction in the value of money. This can be a tricky concept to get your head around. The question, how much is a dollar worth, seems absurd. It's worth, well, $1. But we have to remember that money itself has no inherent value. Dollar bills are just pieces of paper. The only reason we care about them is that they can be exchanged for goods and services. So the value of a dollar is what that dollar can buy. When the same amount of money buys less than it used to, that's inflation. We tend to measure wealth in dollars because it's a convenient yardstick that makes it easy to compare how much we have to how much other people have. But that's actually a mistake. Wealth doesn't consist of stacks of paper and coins. It consists of the goods and services those dollars can buy. This is an important distinction because there's a big difference between increasing the amount of wealth in society versus increasing the amount of money. There's the rub. When the government creates trillions of new dollars out of thin air, as they've been doing for the last several years, it's easy to be fooled into thinking that it's making us wealthier. After all, if you're getting a stimulus check in the mail, you have more money than you had before, right? Maybe in the short run, but when everybody else is getting those same checks, it doesn't take long for that apparent benefit to disappear. And remember, all of that new funny money is destroying the purchasing power of the money you already had in your wallet, or your paycheck, and your bank account. Inflation is like a crafty pickpocket, but on a grand scale. You see, when the government prints money, it's not also increasing the amount of goods and services in the economy. There's still the same amount of food, housing, and medical care as there was before. The only difference is that there's now more dollars chasing those same products. It therefore takes more dollars to buy the same things. The value of each dollar goes down and the prices go up to reflect this. Some politicians like to blame greedy corporations raising prices and gouging consumers. But these higher prices simply reflect the reality of the newly diluted dollar. But what's the big deal, the so-called experts ask? If prices adjust to the greater supply of money, then we're no worse off than before. We may not be any wealthier, but we're not any poorer either, right? Wrong. While that may be true for some people, particularly the super wealthy and the politically connected, inflation is very bad for everyone else. This is because money doesn't lose its value all at once. It takes time as dollars filter down through the economy for the effects of inflation to be fully felt. Thus, the people who get the first crack at newly printed money will benefit, while those at the end of the chain won't. When money is first created, it goes through big banks and big corporations. By the time it reaches the pockets of ordinary workers, prices will have already adjusted and any excess value will be lost. Workers are paying more for food and clothing and rent and gasoline, the things they need to do their jobs and feed their families. Wages are notoriously slow to adjust, so while the price of milk may have doubled, most workers won't see an equivalent pay increase for months or years down the line. Pay has effectively been cut, even as the politicians responsible boast about how their runaway money creation is good for the working man. There are, of course, ways to protect yourself from inflation. While cash loses its value, the price of stocks, commodities, and land will all go up with other prices. People who have their wealth invested in a broad portfolio will be shielded from inflation far more than someone who lives paycheck to paycheck or who keeps all of their money in a checking account. In other words, the rich do fine while the poor get shafted. Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, one of those so-called experts I've been talking about, recently confessed that he doesn't understand this simple mechanism. This should tell you something, both about the reliability of experts who predictably defend government expansion of the money supply and the grossly inflated value of a Nobel Prize. Get it? The scariest thing about inflation is the way it tends to spiral out of control. Once money starts being worth less, you need more of it, so the government prints more, which makes it worth even less, and on and on and on. In extreme cases, this hyperinflation can completely destroy an economy. After World War I, Germany tried to print its way out of debt, with the result that its monthly inflation rate reached 30,000%, with prices doubling every 4 days. In 2008, Zimbabwe experienced one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history, reaching a monthly inflation rate of 79 billion%, with prices doubling every 24 hours. Today, you can buy a $10 trillion Zimbabwean banknote on eBay for about 25 bucks. In Venezuela, the inflation crisis is ongoing. As the country embraced socialism and spiraled into poverty, the only way to pay for lavish public expenditures was for the central bank to print money at an unprecedented rate. By 2019, the inflation rate reached an estimated 10 million%. In the United States, we're not facing anything nearly as bad as that, not yet. But these examples are an important cautionary tale about what can happen when governments keep spending money they don't have. In the long run, these debts always catch up with you. And once that inflationary spiral starts, it can be hard to stop. For now, what we're seeing is a hidden wealth transfer that especially hurts the working class, disguised as kindness and compassion. But taking the money out of the pockets of working Americans while paving the road to economic ruin is neither kind nor compassionate. It's foolhardy, unfair, and ultimately cruel to anyone working hard to put food on the family table.